been thinking about the science of love for about 3 decades. Honestly, in my 20s, I was having such a hard time finding love myself and being the kind of woman who is, likes to intellectually process. I basically started researching way back then. In 1998, I wrote a book called The Boyfriend Test. In 2003, I wrote a book called The Girlfriend Test. And in 2013, I wrote The 30-Day Love Detox, all the time reading the research on the science of love. And as I say to my psychology students when they're picking their term paper topic, you're always going to pick a topic that's somehow close to home. Just try to not make it too close to home, or you're not going to be able to get past it. But I did it to heal myself. And then every time I would learn something new, I'd be like, oh my goodness, everybody should know this. I can't believe they keep this information secret for therapists to only know, and you have to pay them so much money for a 50-minute hour. And so I started really as a journalist and getting finally a midlife PhD in psychology, focusing on human attachment. Now, when you say love is a science, so here's the problem. When we're both experiencing something and we're also trying to study it, it's really difficult to understand. And that's why researchers use real research, right? But there are biological, there are psychological, and there are sociological pieces of love. Here's some examples. So biology. Research has shown that people who have different immune system genes have better sex lives. They actually keep their physical passion for longer, and they have more exciting sex lives. And here's why. So back in our anthropological past, remember, we're put on the planet to reproduce, right? When we met in the wild, we would smell the delicious pheromones of our potential mates. And the closer their immune systems were to us, it indicated that they're probably a relative, right? And so we were less interested in them. And immune system genes give out distinct pheromones or smells, right? And if you think back about it, the hottest sex you ever had in your life, I bet you said, oh my God, they smelled so delicious, right? That's those pheromones at work. Because when you mate to create a new human being, you may take long legs from one, curly hair from another, brown eyes from another, except immune systems combine to make an even stronger superhuman. And the way we detect immune systems is through pheromones. So it makes you want to have great sex with this person. That's one example, only one, of a biological piece of love. Now, another piece is that when you first meet somebody and you go into sort of passionate lust, your brain gets assaulted with a cocktail of neurohormones that change your personality and the way you look at life. For instance, people in love over-report the great pieces of their mate or their lover, right? Yeah, I know that you have a friend who's fallen in love and they can't stop talking about this perfect person, and you know different, but you're not going to bother burst their bubble because you know this is early stage neurohormones. Some people run off and get married at this stage, and it can sometimes be disastrous. Not always, but sometimes. But you create, so early stage love is a big fat delusion, one that shouldn't be cured, by the way. It's got to go through its course. But in that delusion, you have positive delusions about your partner. Also, there's research to show that your brain chemistry, if it has more of the neurohormone serotonin, and there's only one of you with that in a relationship, you're more likely to stay together longer because our serotonin uptake indicates how wide our mood swings will be. Now, there's no right or wrong. It's just all kinds of different personalities that we're born with. But the research has shown if you have two people that have wide mood swings, the hotheads out there, they're more likely to divorce. So there's a biological piece of love. But then there's a big social piece. It's how our mates look to us on paper, their zip code, their education, their profession, their politics, their diet, because relationships are a bridge between tribes. And it doesn't matter if you have perfectly matched pheromones and you have a perfectly great attachment style. If your families are just, too hard to make it all work together, or if you're, I don't know, if everything is so different about your everyday lifestyle, then you're going to have a much more difficult time. Not that people don't try. They certainly try. So The other thing I study when I'm studying the science of love, of course, my most favorite topic is why do people stay together? Because the big question people ask me all the time is monogamy natural? To which I say, surprisingly, it is, because it was selected for an evolution for child rearing, right? So if you got two people with a biological interest in a child staying together and protected them, then that's a good thing. The problem is we're both wired for sexual novelty, and we're also wired for closeness and security. And every single intimate relationship you will ever be in is a constant internal battle between autonomy and union. How much of the individual is there? Does the individual get lost? How much can the couple achieve? You know, two brains can get a lot more done than one. And not even to mention things like it's way cheaper to have one house than two, right? So it's a constant struggle between keeping some sense of individuality and a sense of self, and then also being part of the union. So I love to study people who have been together a really long time, because it always makes me say, how do they win in this battle? And the research constantly shows over and over and over that it is emotional intimacy that is the glue. So if your relationship is based only on paper, the social part of it, what their dating profile says, what your parents would approve of, you're going to have less chance of staying together longer. And by the way, I also do not like that we use duration as the litmus test for relationship success. The truth is, you can have a really successful relationship that lasts a couple years if you learned something valuable about yourself and the other person, and you did some conscious uncoupling. When Till Death Do Us Part was invented, death was pretty imminent. So even the most monogamous of humans may have 2 or 3 long stints of monogamy on the lifespan, with some mate selection in between. Language I don't want to hear you say is failed marriage. That relationship failed. No relationship fails. Every relationship is successful as long as you continue to learn. You know, later in the show, I'm going to be taking your calls, and one person already sent me, you can send me a private message on Instagram. And she talked about a very long marriage that has been filled with a lot of pain for her. And I'm going to talk about how we're constantly making a cost-benefit analysis of what's right for us, what's right for the union, what's right for any kids in the nest, and we're always trying to make the right decision. One of the other things people ask me besides, is monogamy natural? And it's not natural for everybody, by the way. We have the widest range of sexual behavior of any primate species, so just know that. They also ask me, if somebody has a good marriage, why do they have affairs? Why would they risk throwing all that away? In fact, I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, and he was telling me the story of somebody he knew who had a very happy marriage to a great guy, but not what you would call sort of a strong, high testosterone guy, but a very loving, kind, amazing husband who was also a partial provider. They were both workers, and they had kids together. And she starts having an affair with another married man. And they have this affair for 4 years. And almost everybody in her world knows about this affair for 4 years. Of course, when it finally all blows up, and the husband says to all the friends, "What, you knew? Why didn't you tell me?" Like, "Oh, we thought you knew. We thought everybody knew." Because I really believe the unconscious knows all, and there is a silent contract. Anyway, my friend said, why would they do that? Why would they risk blowing everything up? So it made me turn to I have a few favorite theorists on love, but Robert Sternberg, the famous psychologist who studied intelligence, also has a theory of love, the triangular theory of love, where he said there are basically 3 kinds of love. He calls them passion, intimacy, and commitment. And just by listening to those 3 things, you can hear that there are 3 parts of your brain, right? Passion is all about lust and sex and excitement. Intimacy is all about emotions and feelings of closeness, feelings of security. And commitment is an intellectual decision. It's like, do I stay with this person? They seem to be wigging out right now. Is this really worth it for me? They're unemployed right now. I'm going to make a commitment to this, right? And what Robert Sternberg proposed is that you can have one two, or three pieces of this kind of love in your relationship. So let me give you an example. So let's say you've got lust, passion, and you've got emotional intimacy, but you have no commitment. Well, that would be that woman having that affair with a married man, right? Maybe in her own relationship, she had emotional intimacy and she had commitment, but they had lost the sexual passion. So she filled it in with that other relationship. She probably, my friend also said, well, why did she have an affair with a guy who was in another relationship? Like, why not? Because he's thinking that people would use an affair as a stepping stone to exit a relationship. And for many people, that is true. It does happen. And I said, but in her case, she wanted to complete her triangle. Maybe with her husband, she had emotional intimacy and commitment, but they'd lost the sexual passion. So she didn't want to disrupt everything with her kids. So she just filled in that triangle with another person. Now, we know it didn't turn out well. In the end, they both got divorced, but they didn't get together because the relationship, the affair served its purpose as an affair. It wasn't ever meant to be. Now, you could have a relationship that's all about emotional intimacy and commitment and no passion, and that could be okay. We might call that mature companionate love. There are plenty of grandparents out there who aren't going anywhere. They love their kids. They love their grandkids. They're best friends. They do stuff together. They travel. But maybe they're not having sex any longer. Maybe it's something physiological. Maybe it's just they're done with that. That's okay as long as they're happy. Now, you can also have, believe it or not, passion like lust and commitment without having any emotional intimacy. And these are the people that, fall head over heels in their delusions in the early stages of love. And then they run off to Vegas and have some crazy wedding. Celebrities do this all the time. And then it all kind of falls apart, right? So while it should be a goal for all of us to have emotional intimacy, physical intimacy, and commitment in our relationships, people find all kinds of interesting ways to configure these pieces to satisfy themselves. There's no one right way to be a human being, but there are repercussions when relationships don't exist alone in a vacuum. They're attached to many other people. And this is why I'm so obsessed with the science of love, because there are so many pieces to it. And when we dissect our own relationship, I think the most important thing, just let me say this, let me sum up by saying this important thing about the science of love. It is your responsibility, to be aware of your needs, to find constructive ways to express those needs to your partner, and if needed, to seek the third eye of a professional counselor. Do I believe that every single relationship can have emotional intimacy, sexual passion, and commitment? Yeah, but it takes work. And in some stages, it takes sacrifice. Also, long-term monogamy is filled with many stages and phases. Look, when you've got little kids in the house, nobody's knocking boots and hanging from the chandeliers every night. Sorry, everybody's tired. Everybody's under stress, trying to make enough money to support these kids, trying to care for these kids, trying to keep the house clean. So if you think the answer to getting your needs met is to step outside of your relationship, I would venture to say, don't ask what your relationship can do for you. Ask what you can do for your relationship.